Hi, everyone, and good morning to you. Welcome to CID's presentation of how to sell more E&O, EPL, and cyber policies. Your instructors today will be myself, Anae Augustini, CEO of CID Insurance Programs, and Lexi Johnson, who's going to be a really important person to you because she is our senior personal lines underwriter, and she's going to have a lot of knowledge to share with you and be able to answer your questions and get you quotes thereafter. So let's talk about some logistics. You guys probably know the routine by now, but you're going to be muted, but you're able to hear, just not speak. So, but your voice is pretty important to us. So please feel free to, at any time throughout the webinar to chat your questions and to the chat room, and we will answer them as we go. There'll be a short survey after the webinar that will appear, and we'd really appreciate, again, your feedback there as well because it's important to us. So let's talk about what the objectives are today. So we're going to answer some questions for you. We really want to make sure you understand and can explain to your insureds why all of these coverages need to be written, a company needs to have them, and why they need to be written as separate policies. We're also going to talk about current claims trends that really sort of supports why these coverages are needed. We're going to learn why clients hesitate to buy these coverages, but how the shift is taking place that is really making these coverages very important, and how to educate your clients about that. And then we're going to leave you with tools and strategies and sales scripts and talking points that you can use to confidently sell these coverages. It's going to be important to you because these are coverages that can cause problems for you as a broker. So we really want you to understand this and be able to offer these coverages confidently to your clients. So let's get started. So here are the coverages that we're going to talk about, E&O, EPL, and cyber. But I really want to take a moment and talk about general liability, your GL. That's really where everyone starts typically with the GL. We get a lot of requests for professionals in our office that are only, where the broker is only asking for the GL, and it's probably as a result of the insured only feeling that they need GL, or only understanding that a GL has been a coverage that is sort of standard in the industry, and probably not being even aware of professional services for E&O, EPL, or cyber. So the question comes up is always the difference between GL and E&O. We're going to talk about the E&O. It's really for professional services rendered, but GL is for property damage and bodily injury to a third party, and that's sort of a standard coverage. If you rent an office, your lease is going to be requiring you to have a GL to cover your premise, right? Because if someone gets hurt, the landlord does not want to be responsible for it. Also, if you are doing any type of work that requires you to go onto the premises of your client that they're contracting with, then GL is going to be required there. But the E&O is what gets overlooked from time to time, just sort of out of ignorance. And it's really important for you as a broker to understand that most likely they're going to have an E&O claim over a GL claim if they are providing professional services. Secondly, that EPL, employment practices liability, is for businesses with employees. I think probably everyone understands that to a certain degree, and it's really becoming, even though there are some states that are much more prevalent with EPL claims, it is a growing exposure, mainly because they're expanding the discrimination definitions by state that is really causing to become EPL to become much more important in all states across the U.S. And lastly, the more up and coming, and it's a really fast growing coverage, is cyber for any business using technology. And of course, technology is used. Every business has technology. It's become our way of doing business. So this is going to be another one important topic that Lexi will talk about later. So let's dig in deeper. So E&O, your errors and omissions overview. It really covers the professional mistakes that cause financial harm. It's not bodily injury. It's not property damage. It's where you um, you are giving advice as a professional um, and to a client, and yet that advice does not turn out to be a positive for the client, and you actually cause them financial harm. And this happens more often than you can imagine, and sometimes it's just the allegation that's the problem for you as the broker. So it's crucial for all kinds of anyone providing professional services, so consultants, anyone in the tech business, real estate, and contractors a lot of times need that professional liability because they're giving advice and they're making recommendations, not just doing construction work. And then often this coverage is definitely overlooked until after a lawsuit. That becomes an issue, where once you've had a claim, it's harder to get the coverage, and you don't want to be in that position where there's no coverage for this type of lawsuit, especially if you're the broker, because you will be the target. So what kind of claims are we talking about? They come from contract disputes, failure to deliver, or missed deadlines. A simple claim example is marketing consultants are becoming much more prevalent, and they are giving advice on how to market for a company to market itself. So you could get yourself into hot water if you miss a deadline, that could have cost their client a big account. Maybe you're providing marketing, presentation tools or something where they didn't get delivered on time in order to make a presentation to a big account, and that could be a very costly mistake that a broker could get sued over. All right, let's talk further. Now, I love this page because and I'm just trying to move something here so it's out of my way. This is really overcoming objections, and these are tools. We have a marketing piece that we're going to send out to you after this that's going to give you all these tools. And I think it's fun because if they say, I don't need it, which is probably a typical answer you're going to get, here's your answer. The E&O protects you if a client claims you made a professional mistake that caused them financial harm. Even if the claim is groundless, you still need to defend it, and legal defense isn't cheap. So this is a great comeback to anyone who says that. And being able to point out that they're more likely to have an E&O claim than they are a general liability claim. Here's another one. If they say we've never had a problem, that's amazing. That they haven't had one so far, but that's what everybody says until they have their first claim. It's often not about what you did, but how the client perceived it. Great comeback and great important points to make with the insured. And if they say they can't afford it, which is a very common, totally understand. If a claim comes in, you'll be spending 10 times more just to defend yourself. This policy is protection for your time, reputation, and finances, and that is very true. The other thing I probably would add to this is that you need to train your insureds to understand that they have to create a budget for the proper insurance to protect their company. And this is one of those coverages that they cannot afford. So if they want to sleep at night and sleep peacefully at night, they need to set a budget for these types of coverages. And finally, boy, you want to be closing. If they're interested, awesome. I'll send over a bind request. Or the bind request is, it's a very necessary policy that protects your business from things that you can't always control. So closing, this is really important to close. So I think at this point I'm going to turn it over to Lexi to talk about EPL and cyber.
Thank you, Anae, and I want to thank everyone for joining. I'm going to jump into our employment practices liability overview, which stands for EPL. And I want to kick off this section by just sharing some statistics and trends with you that really paints a picture of where we are in our day and age with EPL. So firstly, EPL lawsuits have increased by 400% in the last 2 decades. And I just want to mention there are several key factors that are driving the rise in workplace claims. You have increased employee awareness of their legal rights, the gradual expansion of employment laws, and also just an uptick in firings and layoffs, and the growing challenge of finding employees. And as Anae mentioned earlier, this is no longer just a California issue, but we can see the potential to sue is actually growing nationally. It was reported recently that the state of Texas accounts for 10.2% of the total discrimination charges nationwide. So just something to be aware of. Secondly, the average cost to settle an EPL claim out of court is around $75,000, while if it goes to court, the average cost is around $150,000. So I think it's really important for your clients to know, even if an EPL lawsuit is baseless, the cost of defense can be substantial. EPL, it really provides that financial protection from legal fees, settlements, judgments that are related to the lawsuit. So we can say it really gives the business owners assurance that their business can survive any type of lawsuit. And the last one I wanted to share was the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They actually reported there's a sharp rise in workplace discrimination charges, reporting over 88,000 new cases filed in 2024 and rising in this year of 2025. So based off these few statistics I mentioned, we really can understand how crucial it is now more than ever to offer this coverage to your client. And I'm not going to spend too much time defining it. We know it provides coverage for employers against claims made by current, former, or even prospective employees, and the insurance policy is intended to cover wrongful termination, harassment, discrimination, retaliation, and more. But unfortunately, EPL is viewed a lot by business owners as a secondary policy. And generally, I always hear companies rushing to get the GL and the property policy. But I think it's important to note, one of the largest risks that a business may face comes from other people, whether that's employees or external parties. In fact, actually, according to Berkeley Asset Protection, small businesses are 3 times more likely to face employee lawsuits than they are to have a fire. So I mentioned a couple points here already on the slide, the average cost to defend, and then I just wanted to include a claim example, which I think is very impactful and helpful when you provide this to your client, because I think it really drives the necessity to purchase the policy. But here, a restaurant is sued for racial discrimination by a former server and must pay $150,000 settlement. Speaking from experience, it does happen often where many of our brokers, they submit an EPL risk that experienced a prior EPL claim and they weren't insured at that time. So they're coming to us after the fact. So especially today, we want to provide you with the tools and the strategies to sell EPL to your clients. And then as an insurance agent selling EPL, you may encounter various objections. I'm sure we all can relate that we've heard, I don't need it, we're a small team, we cannot afford it. So we just wanted to lay out some suggestions on how to overcome these objections with your clients. Of course, we always recommend educating your clients on the value of EPL and then provide, tailored solutions that can help sell it. If they say, I don't need it, they might say my workplace is friendly. We put EPL covers you for claims like harassment, wrongful termination, discrimination, even if they're made by a past employee or someone you never hired. They aren't covered by GL. Also, asking open-ended questions I think is important. What steps do you currently take to prevent claims of discrimination or harassment? It really gets them thinking on the necessity of the coverage itself. And then secondly, if they say, we're a small team, it's actually recently reported that 41% of all EPL claims are from small businesses. So EPL claims can impact any business of any size, and actually it's very prominent among smaller businesses because they may lack the experience to properly, oversee, recruit, hire, manage, fire, which subjects them to EPL claims. And then lastly, we cannot afford it. So we put, I hear that a lot, but defending just one employee claim can run, 30,000 plus. Also, I just wanted to mention, you can always offer lower limits as an option. I know a lot of companies, they add EPL as a sublimit on like their BOP policy or on another policy that they may have. But I just wanted to address that typically that coverage is pretty insufficient. We always recommend offering a standalone policy, but offering those lower limits if they cannot afford it at that time. So again, these are just some strategies to help, address these objections with your clients, educating them on the importance of EPL and then helping them secure the coverage. And I want to move into cyber liability. So nearly every business today depends upon technology to get the job done. And that includes internet, desktop, servers, email, pretty much everything. So despite size, every business is truly exposed to a cyber attack. And as technology becomes more complex and sophisticated, so do the cyber threats. And the cyber policy is really intended to cover, that ransomware, that wire fraud, phishing, data breach, and social engineering. And also, is intended to cover just the aftermath of a cyber incident. Your traditional insurance policies are not designed to cover cyber losses. Typically, we see, traditional insurance policies covering more tangible assets, such as maybe, your property, inventory, hardware, equipment. But the most valuable asset to a cyber criminal is information. So that's really the purpose of a cyber policy. It's to provide, that comprehensive coverage to help support the cost associated with any type of cyber incidents that happens. So here's a cyber claim example. An accounting firm was hit with ransomware. And it costs, $90,000 to recover and then $30,000 in business interruption. So cyber is actually a very common type of cyber attack. It was actually the leading cyber claim for a long time. But ransomware, we know, is any type of malicious software that causes harm or disruption to a computer system, and then there's a demand payment in return for unlocking their system. So again, we want to provide some suggestions when also you may encounter some of these cyber objections from your clients. So cyber liability, more than any other coverage, I believe, is strongly misunderstood by many business owners. Many have the it won't happen to me mentality until it does. So I think it's really important to address that thought with your clients. Cyber attacks are a reality, and every business is vulnerable despite size. So you might hear a lot, I don't need it. I would recommend, educate on the purpose of the coverage. As I mentioned, the quote covers ransomware, email fraud, data breaches, all things your GL policy won't cover. It really acts as like a financial safety net for the business owner, and it really is a critical risk management strategy. So cyber liability shouldn't be treated as a mere add-on, but we always recommend purchasing a standalone policy. You might hear, we're too small. Again, 85% of breaches hit small businesses, not big brands. You might hear it's too expensive. I would always recommend sharing some claim examples. Even if a company has a very good security system and a strong IT team, no system is completely secure. So I think it's important to recognize that. Cyber liability, the losses can be substantial, potentially having the capacity to outpace EPL claims, but the cyber policy premiums are very competitive. It's a very cost-effective coverage. And then we had a question come in asking about, what are some premium reduction strategies when it comes to cyber liability? I would just mention that I would inform your clients about measures that they can implement to potentially lower their cyber insurance premiums. They could implement strong cybersecurity practices. A lot of times carriers are looking for that multi-factor authentication. So I'd always recommend implementing that, and then also employee training. And then by applying these strategies, you can effectively educate your clients on the critical need of cyber insurance. Okay, tips to sell more E&O, EPL, and cyber. So we just wanted to share some tips for our brokers. Number one, we always recommend cross-selling on your existing book of business. It's a great way to win more business. Also, when you tend to have more policies on the books for one client, your retention is greater of keeping those policies. So I would always suggest when your renewals are approaching, send over options to quote these additional coverages for your client, and you can also provide indications. And then, as I previously mentioned, lead with claim examples. They're very impactful. We actually have on our website, CIDinsurance.com, we have tools that are designed for our agents to use, and we specifically have a PDF that you can download that lists claim examples, and they're broken out by coverage. We have an entire education library as well, so you can provide the best knowledge to your clients, but I definitely encourage you to check it out on our website because there's many tools to help you along the way. And then, give them a refusal to bind form for declined quotes. This also is for you to cover your E&O exposure also.
So I'm going to cover why you need to offer all these coverages. And we've been talking and giving you a lot of reasons why all through this webinar. So this is sort of like maybe a close to just summarize a few things. This is a big exposure for you as the broker. We've mentioned it, Lexi has, I have. I just want to take a minute on this. Most of the lawsuits against a broker that I see are generally because they did not offer a coverage where the client actually has a claim and there's no coverage in place. That's a direct target to sue the broker or at least turn in a claim on their E&O. And you don't want to have a claim on you don't want to have a claim in general on your E&O because that actually increases your premiums, makes it harder to get coverage. And so you really this becomes the most important thing for you as the broker to understand that this is your biggest exposure by not offering this coverages. And no court's going to side with the insurance broker who didn't offer the coverage. So Lexi mentioned this as well. A lot of the package policies are throwing in a little bit of cyber or a little bit of EPL, but it's not. In the end, it's not all of the coverage where you could easily have a loss, or the client could have a loss. Sorry, so you can't get the full coverage you need on one policy. You need to propose separate policies so it doesn't get you in additional hot water. And then always offer the 3 coverages to anyone with the exposure, as Lexi has gone over very carefully. It's important for you, again, to not have that exposure as a broker. It's your job. Do it on renewals and do it on new business. At least put it out there to offer these coverages and make sure it's in writing.
Okay, so how to get quotes from CID. We make it very seamless for our retailers to obtain quotes. Depending on the risk and their services being offered, we have specific applications that require minimal information on our website, which are accessible to you, and that is, again, cidinsurance.com. As always, I'm here to help with any questions on a risk. If you just want to know if we have a market, please reach out to me, send me an email, give me a call. I'd be happy to discuss the risk for you and see if we can consider. I also want to mention we have a cyber platform that you can access. It's designed for our agents. Jacob will be sending that link out to you after the webinar, but you just need to collect basic information from your insured, such as their company name, address, what they're doing exactly, their services, their annual revenue, and then it's helpful if if they utilize that MFA that I was speaking about. But from there, you can actually receive up to 9 standalone quotes in minutes. From leading cyber carriers, it takes maybe 3 to 5 minutes to quote. So I encourage you to quote some of your existing business or any new business that comes in. It's a great platform and it's very user-friendly. And we're actually at the end of our webinar. We have our submission email that you can submit your applications to directly, or as I mentioned, you can send it directly to me as well. My email is listed on the slide, and Jacob will be sending out that short survey for you to complete so we can get some feedback from you and improve future webinars. But we want to thank you so much for joining despite your busy schedules. I look forward to working with you, and I hope you have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.